Hello sweet ladies, you're welcome back to my channel. My name is Yinka. In today's class we're going to be making this gown, and here are the measurements we'll be using for the class. So let's get started. So for this tutorial I used just 4 yards of fabric. The fabric I use is by 60 inches length. So let's get into it. So first I'm going to be folding my fabric into two so that I can cut the front first. So I roll my guideline, then after that I measure down all my vertical measurements. I measure down the length of my armhole, my waist length, my hip line, and then the length of my gown. The length of my gown is 60 inches, so I measure that with my seam allowance of 1.5 inch. So after that I will extend the lines. My armhole line, which is also my chest line, my waistline, my hip line, and of course we already measured the length. Alright, so starting from the folded edge, I'm going to measure my shoulder measurements divided by 2. My shoulder is 16 divided by 2, that will be 8 inches. I'll measure that on the guideline, and I'll also measure it on the chest line. Then I'll connect the 2 points together. So that is my armhole line. Alright, so I'm going to measure 3 inches inward starting from the folded edge so that I can slant the shoulder. Then from the tip of the shoulder I'll come down by 1 inch. Then I'll connect it back to that 3 inches point. That is my shoulder slant, and then I'm going to add ½ inch to that line for my shoulder seam allowance. Alright, so the next thing we're going to be doing is to input all our circumference measurements. So on the chest line, I'm going to input my bust measurements divided by 4 plus 1 inch seam allowance. On the waistline, I'm going to input my waist measurements divided by 4 plus 1 inch seam allowance. If you like, you can add ease to the waistline, but I'm not going to be adding ease because I'm going to be having zipper at the back of the gown. So there's no need for his and no need for that. Then on the hip line, I'll input my hip measurement divided by 4 plus 1 inch seam allowance. And whatever I have on my hip line, I'm going to subtract 1.5 inch from that measurement, and I'll put it at the hem of the gown. So here I have 11.5 inch on the hip line, so I'm going to measure 10 inches at the hem line. This is just to make it to be like a pencil kind of shape at the hem. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is to connect all the points together using my curve ruler. Alright, so from the chest line, I'll connect to the waistline, then to the hip line, and then straight to the hem. Then from the waistline, I'll connect it to the hip line. Then from the hip line, I'll connect it to the hem of the dress. Then after connecting the points together, the next thing I'm going to do is to finish the armhole. So I'm going to place my French cuff, touching my chest line and touching the armhole line. I'm going to get the back armhole cuff. Alright, so the next thing now is to measure the midpoint midpoint of the armhole so that I can get the front armhole cuff. So from the midpoint, you come in by 1/2 inch and then you blend it back to the shoulder this way. Then you place your French cuff, touching that midway and touching the chest line. You get the front armhole cuff this way. Note, we are going to be using this to trace out the back, hence the reason for drafting the back armhole on this pattern. All right, so for the neck width to be 3.5 inches. Then the back neck depth is going to be 1 inch, while the front neck depth is going to be 3.5 inch. Then I'll just connect it together. Don't forget, we're going to be using this front bodice to cut out the back. So this is the front neckline. The neck depth for the front is 3.5, while the neck depth for the back is 1 inch. All right, so we are going to be cutting out the bodice now, but first we are going to be cutting out on the back neckline. Then after that, we cut out the back armhole. Then you continue cutting until you cut out the whole pattern. All right, so we're going to be keeping this aside. We'll be using it to cut out the back. So place your fabric into 2 fold again. Then from the edge, you measure 2 inches inward like this. This is going to be your zip allowance. So you roll it into a straight down all the way down. Then you're going to place the front that you already cut out on the pattern. You match the center front to align with the line that you roll. Then the next thing you want to do is to locate the waistline, and on the waistline, from this edge of the fabric like this, you go inside by 1/2 inch so that you can redraw the shape for the back. So you blend it back to the top and then you blend it downward, and you are going to stop at the hip line. That is the hip line that I'm trying to extend there. Then you connect it this way. Then after that, you cut it out. This is just to prevent the zip from bulging at the back. Then after that, you just trace out the shape that you have on the front pattern. Exactly the same shape. So from the hem of the dress, you measure 23 inches upward, and then you are going to notch that part. That is going to be your slit length for the back. When you're done using the front to cut out the back, you're going to take the front out. Don't forget to also notch your zip allowance. So you're going to take the front and then you keep the back. You're done with the back, keep it aside. Then you're going to be reshaping the front neckline and the front armhole. All right, so this is the front. So the next thing is to create that keyhole that's in the middle of the neckline. So from the edge of the neckline, you come down by 1/2 inch. Then from that 1/2 inch, you measure 2.5 inches downward this way. Then you locate the midway of that 2.5, and at that point you go in by 0.5 inch. Then you round your hand and form a cuff the way I'm showing you here. Then after that, you cut it out. First slit the 1/2 inch, then you cut the shape out. So by the time you open it, you have something like this. All right, so fold it back into 2. and pin it so that it can remain in place, because you are still going to be using this to cut another thing out. So the next thing is to locate your waistline, and from your waistline you measure 20 inches downward, or it depends on the length you get from your waistline to your knee. So measure yourself or your client from the waistline to the knee, whatever measurement you get, that's what you're going to use. So from my waist to the knee line is 20 inches. So note that position, because you're going to be using this to trace it out on another fabric. So place another fabric on fold, a smaller fabric this time around. So what you're going to do is to first measure 1.5 inches downward and rule it as a guideline, or it will still serve as the seam allowance for the upper part. So rule it into a straight line this way. So place the front pattern on it and align the waistline with the line that you ruled, and let the folded edge match together as well. The two folded edge, let them align properly. So what you're going to do is just to cut out this shape, and then you stop on the knee measurement. So just cut it out and stop at that point that you note as your knee. Can you see? So you just roll it like that. So cut it out. So the length here is from your waist length to your knee measurement, but then you already have 1.5 inch upward as your seam allowance. Can you see? So if you open it up, you have something like this. So if you notice, the good side of my fabric is facing up, while the wrong side is facing the table. So when you have it this way, the right side facing up, so the next thing you want to do is to locate your left hand side on the fabric, because your wrap comes to the left hand side. If you tie wrapper, it usually goes to the left hand side. So locate the left hand side, and on the left hand side you measure down 3.5 inches. Measure 3.5 inches, and from that 3.5 inches you slant it to the extreme end this way, like this, so that you can cut it. So you can just use your hand to get the shape, or you rule it straight. So I'm going to be using ruler to do this, but you can use your hand as well. So just connect it from that 3.5 inches to the other extreme end, the way I'm showing you. Can you see? So you just do it like this. Then after that you cut it out. So if you notice, I slightly end it at my seam allowance. Can you see? Alright, so I'll notch the upper parts. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to cut the parts that I'm going to gather to this curved part that I cut out. So what you're going to do is to get your front bodice back, and then from the knee measurement, so from the knee you measure down the remaining length of the gown. Here the remaining length of my gown is 25 inches, and if you want it to be dragging the floor like on the picture, you can make it longer, but I don't think I want something that will wear and to be sweeping the floor. I want something that I can be able to wear. Alright, so the width of the remaining length is going to be 3 times the circumference of this part. So when I measured the circumference of this part, I got 31 inches. So what you're going to be doing next is to cut out another fabric that measured 3 times the circumference of this place, but the length is going to be the remaining length of your gown. So I'll cut out the fabric that measured 31 inches multiplied by 3. That will give me 93 inches. So 93 inches width fabric, then the length is going to be 25 inches. So fold your fabric and cut another fabric that measured 93 inches width, and then the length is going to be 25 inches. So that is what you're going to be gathering to form this part. All right, so I'll just cut it out. Like I said, the length is going to be 25 inches. And then the width is going to be 93 inches. So I just folded my fabric into multiple layers, then I measured 25 inches. Then I'll just roll it into a straight line so that it can be straight. After that, I'll cut it out. So you can see it's a very long fabric. So here I have about 3 yards. So and the length is 25 inches, don't forget. So the next thing I'll cut out is my sleeve. I'm not going to be doing that straight pencil sleeve. I'll be adding elastic band to the hem of my sleeve. So I just cut out my sleeve. You can do any sleeve of your choice. It must not necessarily be the exact one on the picture or even the one I'm doing. You can just do anything you like. So I just cut out this type of sleeve. So after cutting out the sleeve, the next thing is to cut out your belt. So the width of my belt is 4 inches. Then the length is about 50 inches. Then I cut 2. I cut 2 belts. That's what you're going to be using to tie the wrap. You can see the length is about 50 inches while the width is 4 inches. All right, so here's the summary of our cutout. So here's the back, and it's into 2 pieces. We also have the front. We have the wrap that is going to be on top of the front. Can you see? We have this tiny little piece that is going to form the wrap. Then we have the one that we are going to be gathering and don't forget the length of that is the remaining length of the gown from the nail, and the width is 3 times the circumference of the layered on top. Then we also have the sleeve. All right, so we are going to be sewing our gown now. First, I'm starting with that long fabric that we cut out that we're going to be gathering. So first you hem the bottom part and the 2 sides. Then after that you run a gathering stitch at the upper part so that you can pull your gather. So just run your gathering stitch, change your machine setting to the longest stitch length so that you can pull the gather. So after that, you're going to gather this long piece to be 31 inches. If you remember, the circumference of that wrap piece is 31 inches. So gather it to 31 inches. You can see the circumference of that place is 31 inches. So gather it to that part. So you get the the wrap part, first you are going to be aiming the upper part of this wrap. So this is the upper part, that 1.5 inch that we left at the top. You are going to be sewing it. So when you're done folding the upper part of the wrap, the next thing is to attach the gathered fabric under it. So just attach it. So I think I should spread this on a flat surface so that you can see it better. Alright, so this is the part that's going to be forming the wrap. You have hemmed the upper part. You are going to be attaching the gathered fabric to this down part. So when you are joining the gathered to the upper part, you will not allow the gathered fabric to get into your allowance. So you stop before you get to your allowance. So you are going to match the right side of the gathered fabric together with the right side of the wrap, and then you are going to pin. Don't forget, the gathered will not get to this part as well, because this is where you're going to be attaching the belt. Alright, so I've joined the wrap together with the gathered part. You can see the way it's looking. So the next thing is to attach your belt to this part. You're going to be attaching your belt to this part and also to the other side. And if you notice, I did not allow the gathered part to get into my seam allowance. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to be sewing is my belt. So I'll just fold it into two and I'll sew it with 1/2 inch seam allowance. The two belts. Then when you're done sewing, you turn it to the right side. So just push something inside it and bring it to the right side. And when you're done, you're going to be attaching the belt to the wrap. So just place the belt the way I'm showing you here at that other side that you left for the belt and stitch on it. Sew it together with 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then when you're done sewing it this way, flip it to the other side this way and top stitch on it. So that you can reinforce that seam. Alright, one side done. At the other side, you're going to be placing the second belt, and then you're going to be stitching it together, right side to right side. So by the time you join this side, you're just going to be leaving it the way it is. You don't need to top stitch on it, just leave it like that. That's the part that is going to be entering the seam allowance. Alright, so keep it aside and then you work on the bodice. So I'll be starting with the front. First thing I'm going to do is to use bias to turn that keyhole that I have at the center of the neckline. Place your bias on top of it, right side of the bias facing the right side of the dress, and then you stitch all around the opening. Then when you're done, turn your bias to the wrong side and top stitch. All right, so I'm done with the keyhole. So just mash them together this way. It's not as if you overlap them, you just place them beside each other, that's all. And then you stitch together like this so that the neckline can be continuous. Just do back and forth stitch like 2 times so that the neckline can be continuous like that. Can you see? So working with the back, I'll just place my zipper on top of it and measure the length of my zipper. So from where my zipper stops, like maybe 1 inch before my zipper end, I'm going to stitch close from that point till I get to where I notch for my slit. So this is the point where I have my slit notching. I'll stop at that point. So the next thing you want to do is to hem the bottom part of your gown. So using the allowance you added to the hem, you are going to be hemming this hem of your gown. Then when I get across to the slit, I'll also hem the slit part. Then when I get back to the hem, I'll sew across as well. All right, so that's it. The next thing I'll do is to join the shoulder together. So match the right side of the front together with the right side of the back and join the shoulder. Then after that, you can attach your zip. And if you like, you can attach the zip before joining the shoulders together. Then the next thing is to measure down your neckline so that you can cut out the collar. I've explained to you how you can cut a bishop collar in one of the tutorials in the past. So I'm going to leave the link in the description box so that you can use it and cut out your collar. So I've cut out my collar and I've attached my collar. You can see, and I also put a button loop at the back. So the next thing you do is to attach your sleeve. This is my sleeve. I'm going to hem my sleeve, the bottom part of my sleeve, because I'm going to be creating elastic casing for it. And after that, I will attach it to the dress. All right, so I've attached the collar and also I've attached the sleeve. So the next thing now is to join the wrap on top of the front bodice. So this is the front part and the right side is facing up. So note the position of your waistline. That's my waistline there. That is where the wrap is going to start from. So place the wrap on top of it. So the wrong side of the wrap will be facing the right side of the front bodice. So it's going to be like this. So after placing it on top of each other, you are going to pin. Don't forget to flip the belt like this because you don't want your belt to go and be hiding inside your dress. So flip it this way, the way I've flipped mine, and then you pin it. So after pinning, you take to the sewing machine and then you join it together from the waistline to the knee. You can see, join it like that. This is the knee. You join it from the waistline to the knee. So I've joined it. So the next thing you will do now is to put all your wrap in the middle so that it doesn't enter your seam allowance, so that you can now place the back on top of it, and then you pin so that you can close the sides. Ensure you flip all the wrap out of the way. Don't let it get into your seam allowance, except for that part that you already attached to the front, that waist to knee that you already attached. All right, so I'll close the side of my dress with 1 inch seam allowance because I added just 1 inch for the seam allowance. And that's it, your gown is ready. So don't forget to watch the video for the collar so that you can be able to attach collar to your own gown if you want it with collar. And here is the outcome of our gown. I like it. It's so beautiful, and yeah. I love it. I like the way it makes me look. Don't laugh at my gele. I tie it like my mother. This is how my mom used to tie her gele. So yeah, I like it. I don't know. I just love the way it is. I love it so much. Honestly, I love it. Yeah. I'm going to add this to the collection of my church wear. Probably I'm going to rock it this Sunday. And that's the end of today's class. I'll see you in our next tutorial. Please, if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please kindly subscribe. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.